Hello world. I recorded, I would assume, about 7 minutes without pressing play, without pressing record. So this is me attempting again to discuss the subject that I was actually trying to approach. If I were to call this subject something, I would probably call it, I want to say, emptiness. It's funny because like the theme over the past couple of weeks was literally like empty your mind kind of thing. It's probably always been a theme with me. But a note I took when I was having a conversation with somebody was how people get fidgety when something new is coming out of them, and then I would imagine something new to be more on the presence of, because I made a video about it earlier or sometime a couple of weeks ago, and the video was every conversation we have is a conversation we had, and then what happens when you run out of these conversations? Because like if I'm looking at somebody and basically I already said enough stuff that I have pre-prepared or pre-discussed or pre-researched or pre-structured. You know, your mind absorbs things and kind of formulates things around them. And this is probably like the Feynman technique at its finest, because once you kind of let something out, you empty your cup and then you basically get to refill it with more refined information or get a bit more creative about what exactly you're trying to do, to say, or engage with. So it's funny because like every time we'd be talking, everything will be cool. We'd be maintaining eye contact, and it will be an actual conversation until it kind of reaches a point where she runs out of stuff to say, and I realize there's this small gap where I strongly believe that people kind of like misuse, because that's the gap where you kind of like can open up with a question or kind of like make a statement, and the way you approach it would either block the person and kind of be like, no, oh yeah, or get over it, or just change the subject, or allow them to truly express something completely new to them, which could be scary, which is probably freaky, which is what I keep doing with these videos, because every single time I record a video, I kind of like just write a note of what I want to speak about and I allow myself to kind of like elaborate on it. Ridiculously so. I am recording this time. I had to check. So there's a certain emptiness towards, okay, so we've all felt it when you finish working out. There's this kind of like stoic feel leaving the gym where you feel like there's this sense of accomplishment. If I'm not mistaken, these are the endorphins working, like the activity behind it. And I feel if you look at the brain as a muscle as well, the deeper you understand a conversation, the easier it becomes for you to do. And if we can correlate it to kind of like working out, like, I normally work out and I can do, let's say, 10 straight pull ups. But if I do just one pull up, my muscle is going to be like, right? I'm not going to get any endorphins out of it. But if I push myself to 12, then basically my muscle is going to be like sending me all these hormones in order for me to be like, oof, right? Like, no, we got above and beyond, and this was beyond our comfort zone or beyond our normal reach. And I feel strongly that it's the same with the mind. And especially when you're exposing something, there's always this line where you kind of like, if I throw a subject at you or a topic at you, the first thing you do is you kind of like grab onto a couple of triggers, and then instantly what you have in your head set up would kind of like respond. And the deeper we dive in this response, it's just kind of cute the way I think about it right now, because normally I've always said, like, if you ask enough questions, people tend to either give up, get frustrated, or change the topic. Unless somebody's really into that topic, then they can just spend hours and even days. Why? Because it's just coming flowing out of them. This flowing out of them. And it's fascinating because this flowing out of you is not really something you prepare. It's something that kind of like has prepared itself on its own because of the nature of the environment you always exposed it to. So a good a good question about that was like, I was talking to a doctor friend of mine, and he he couldn't care less about being a doctor, man. And every single time I ask him about like medicine and what's happening in the field, he couldn't care less. He literally would kind of like, it felt like I was asking him a question like he was in school, and he would just summarize what he memorized. But then one day I asked him about his patients, and the guy just completely let loose. And it was the most positive thing to hear. Because for him, his actual profession concerned the patients more than him being a doctor. And his points of interest, the way everything about him being a doctor has been pre-formulated, pre-structured based on the medicine that he learns and he keeps up with and all the articles he reads. But everything when it comes to the patients and how he deals with them, for him was like beyond an activity, was a passion of his, was a an inspiring part of him. And so I imagine when having a conversation with people, every time you kind of like empty out the things that they already have pre-prepared, they become very either aware of their emptiness, which causes fidgetiness, and that probably causes some form of like shift in a conversation or kind of like, what the fuck are you on? Kind of like status, because a lot of people would like blatantly reject you. Like, what are you trying to do? Well, for some, if they trust you or if they believe that it's okay for them to kind of be exposed, they'll be able to kind of like bring out more out of themselves when it comes to the things that they probably like, I don't want to say haven't considered before, but neglected. And it's fascinating to see because it is really just a small thing your body does just to kind of like maintain focus. Your hands, your legs, my legs, for example, shake anytime like I'm kind of like feeling exposed or I bite my nails. Or like for other people, it could be as simple as organizing what's in front of them, like a bit of OCD kind of thing. And it shows like everything in them is in complete focus to their surrounding, to their environment, and their mind is active vocally, trying to kind of like taking its time, trying to express what they have after everything has been emptied out. And I strongly believe that's the same feeling as the endorphins that you get after a good workout. Because once your mind kind of like empties everything out, you kind of like get this whole like, oof, I pushed myself a bit too much. Because everything that's inside, I put in the effort, the time to actually get it out. And this happened in a conversation. May I'm thinking of how I can apply it to whatever work I'm doing and how I can be applying it not to studying to that my actual evolution when it comes to the things that I'm trying to do, and to be able to kind of like let all the information I have out and then add that extra 20 minutes to an hour where I'm just kind of like trying to be creative on my own to see where that would take me. And it happens naturally with code because anytime you kind of reach a block, like you don't know what you're doing when it comes to the code, the best thing you could do is kind of like look back at what you've wrote. So it kind of like establishes a clear image, and then you get to observe all the details that you kind of did naturally, and you highlight them in your mind, and you kind of like retrace your process and formulate your logic and all that good stuff. So I don't know. There's a thing about exposure and how you only feel exposed when the things that you are doing are not necessarily things that you're prepared for. And that could be in a conversation with people, or it could be like a random ski jump that you're attempting for the first time. record or just a conversation with somebody you don't know, all of these are kind of like us exposing ourselves, opening ourselves up. And sometimes it doesn't matter how much you prepare, it's coming out completely fresh. And I really think there's a small thing within that time frame that truly points at how you kind of like what being alive truly means. Because once you get used to a certain behavior, the first thing you do is you get complacent with it. And it's all these new things that kind of like allow you to detach from yourself and then come back. You wanted a random conversation? Here's one. Peace. Thank you.